Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at the big ideas for our lesson on chi-squared goodness of fit tests. So we have two things that we want to talk about in these big ideas. The first one is, what do the hypotheses look like? Well, we still have a null and an alternative hypotheses, but with a goodness of fit test, we are looking to see if our observed values match the expected values. We have a set of values that we are expecting to see. How well do our observed values, what comes from our sample, how well do those match what is expected? So our null hypothesis is going to assume that our observed values do match the expected values. So we could say this: in the null, the observed values equal the expected values. Now, we would want to put a little bit of context in here when we write this for our actual FRQ questions, but the observed values equal the expected values. That's our null hypothesis. The alternative is just the opposite of that. The observed values do not equal the expected values. And that's all it comes down to. You don't have to get overly complicated with your null and alternative hypotheses when we're talking about a goodness of fit test. The other thing we want to talk about in the big ideas video here is our assumptions and conditions. Two of our conditions are very, very familiar, and we've seen them quite a bit. But the other two are going to be brand new. So let's start with the first one, and that is our randomization condition. Was our data collected randomly? Now, if our data was not collected randomly, we have to assume that our data represents the population. So the randomization condition, we should be at this point in time in the course, you should be very familiar with that condition. The second condition that is very familiar to us is our 10% condition. And it says the sample size is less than 10% of the population size. So we've seen this many, many times before. Now, the thing to keep in mind is with the sample size that we're talking about, this is the total number of observed values. Now, if you're just watching this video randomly, and you haven't gone through the lesson or been taught a lesson on goodness of fit tests, you probably don't know what these observed values are. So make sure that you get a lesson on goodness of fit tests before you go any further with this video. But our sample size is the total amount of all the observed values. As long as our sample size is less than 10% of what our population size is, then that condition has been met. Now we get into the other two conditions. The first one is counted data, the counted data condition. Well, we have to make sure that our data that was collected is from a categorical variable, and we have to know that it has been counted. We have whole numbers. When we run a goodness of fit test, we should not have decimals that we are collecting. So our data was collected from a categorical variable and it was counted. They are counts. Lastly, our last condition that we need to check is our expected cell frequency. During a goodness of fit test, we are going to calculate these expected values. Well, each of our expected values needs to be at least 5. So this is something that we can actually check mathematically. We calculate those expected values. As long as each one of our expected values is at least 5, then that condition has been met as well. And that's it. Those are the big ideas for this particular lesson on goodness of fit chi-squared tests. Hopefully this helps, and hopefully you have a great day.